So here we are today at James E. Pepper Distillery. It's such a storied distillery with tons of history, tons of...
Hello, I'm Bo Cumberland, your tour guide, and welcome to another episode of 10 Minute Distillery Tours. Today, we're embarking on a journey through the heart and soul of some of the finest distilleries around, from the aroma of aging barrels to the secrets behind crafting that perfect sip. We're diving deep into the world of whiskey. So grab your favorite glass, join me on this adventure, and let's explore the alchemy behind the magic in every bottle.
So here we are at James E. Pepper Distillery. It's a very storied distillery with lots of history. I'm here with my buddy Cody Giles, the head distiller here. So Cody, before we get started with our tour and everything, talk a little bit about what your actual job is here, what your kind of day-to-day life is like here.
Yes, so my title is plant manager / head distiller. I wear quite a few different hats in the distillery. We're a small group, so it's sort of required of everybody, but runs the gamut from raw materials, procurement, quality control, blending, and sensory, and all in between. So yeah, awesome. I've been here a little over 7 years, so ever since we first fired up the still, so it's been a fun journey.
So can you talk just briefly about, for those that don't know about this distillery, it was a pre-Prohibition distillery, kind of made it through Prohibition and shuttered in the 60s, and now it's been reopened. So can we talk a little bit about how that reopening kind of came about? Just briefly. We'll talk more about it later, but just kind of briefly.
Yeah, so in 2007, 2008, the brand was reacquired, and through selling some sourced products, I was able to fund the renovation here and a small part of what was the old James Pepper Distillery in the late 19th century. And so worked with really good engineering architect partners and Ben Dome for our still, and started distilling in late 2017.
All right, I don't want to keep the suspense any longer. Why don't we get on that tour and get to that tasting? So thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Let's do it.
We're at the back of the distillery. We're in our grain handling area. So this is where we're taking our whole kernel grain, our corn, our rye, our barley, and it's going to be sent to our mill that's right outside. And then from there, it's going to follow this conveyor on top to our cooker. And these black seed boxes hold about 2,000 pounds of grain, and that's what's going to go into one of our cooks.
Is all your grain kind of not local, but do you get where?
Yeah, so our corn's coming from Fayette County. It's all Fayette County grown corn, and our rye is gonna come from the terminal bulk commodity rye. So that's mostly northern US states, but it's a little bit of a mix. And then our barley malt is coming from Minnesota, from Raw Malt House, which was they're actually using raw malt historically in the 1940s at the old distillery, so that's sort of cool. And our bottling line, this is our one line where we're doing everything that's on a shelf in a James Pepper bottle came through this line. It takes a little bit of pitching in from everybody. I'll get on the line sometimes, but we're running this usually every day of the week during the daytime hours. But yeah, about 40,000-ish cases a year through that. The black tube coming down is where that milled grain's gonna come in. It's gonna meet the water, and we're gonna heat it with steam, hit all the temperatures we're trying to hit. We'll cool it down and then drop it into one of these fermenters here, where we'll then ferment it. So here you can see a few different fermenters of rye at various stages of fermentation.
But tell us about this beauty right here.
So this is our 12-inch column still from Ben Dome. It's 14 trays. We can get through a 1,000-gallon beer in about 5 hours. We're producing about 5 barrels a day of bourbon, and about almost 2,000 a year. The namesake of this distillery, James Pepper, he's the third generation of distillers to make pepper whiskey. The Peppers were a founding family of bourbon in Kentucky. James built the distillery that we're at now in 1880. It ran through the 1960s. before it shuttered. And in that time, he was a big proponent for advancing the rights of distillers. He's central in getting the Bottled in Bond Act passed. So from '67 until about 2007, the brand was left untouched until the owner picked it up and started selling whiskey under the James Pepper label again. And through that, was able to renovate the original distillery.
Why don't we go sample some whiskey?
Absolutely, sounds good to me.
All right. Thank you so much, Cody, for the tour. We got to see all the magic behind this place, the history. Now we get to do the fun part and taste what's in the glass. So why don't you tell us what we're tasting right now?
Absolutely. So this is our Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. It's in our Decanter package. This is a barrel proof product. It's a blend of all the different bourbon mash bills that we run on site. It's barrel proof and low entry proof, so all of them are coming out at around 105, 106, these batches. It's a extremely small batch product, and it's sort of the end result of our distilling and blending program. So this is what we had in mind with that distilling and blending program.
So would you say this is pretty much kind of like you guys, not flagship product, but like...
Yeah, you could call it flagship. So
Okay.
this plans to be on the shelf as an everyday product, and yeah, definitely looking to continue it.
Awesome.
And expand our volumes of it too that we can put out. So,
Yeah. Oh, cool. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Wow. The front palate for me is super sweet, like, baking spices kind of sweetness. And then there is a kick at the end of it, like a rye kick. I mean, nothing offensive or anything, but it definitely is well-rounded.
Yeah, and that was part of the approach with the mash bills, is we like what all of the flavor grains bring in a 3-grain or 4-grain bourbon. And so we sort of isolated those into our mash bills, and we can really play around with the end profile in the bottle, so it's fun. And we're happy it's turned out as well as it has. We couldn't be happier with it.
What would you say kind of, not even just for this product, but maybe your whole lineup, but what do you think kind of sets them apart from what else is out there on the market?
Well, I think our distilling and blending program with the different bourbon mash bills is pretty unique. I think while we are small scale craft distillery, we make no reservations in terms of quality. From the grain to the cooperage, it's the highest quality, everything we can get, and I think it translates to the bourbon for sure.
Absolutely. You said this was a blend of your different mash bills, right? So are you responsible for coming up with the mash bills, or do you have a team that does that, or how does that come about?
So it was sort of our plan from day one with the owner operator. He had an idea for doing these mash bills with a minimum corn percent, and then the remainder being some of our different flavor grains. Maybe we didn't necessarily know how it would turn out in the end, but I think we don't get too crazy with the mash bill. I think there's examples of some of these mash bills out there as their own standalone, especially when like the high rye is a few percentage points away from some rye whiskeys out there.
Right.
The high rye bourbon. And so we knew we weren't going to get too crazy with weird flavors or anything,
Right.
but
I know we're not sipping on this right now, but I would be remiss if I did not bring up, you have a wonderful line of products, like all of your products are awesome, but one of my favorite whiskeys on the planet is your Single Malt.
Yeah, if only we could get some more people on the train.
That's what I want to do, because so Single Malt, is kind of in the spotlight now because, it's a recognized category now. So talk a little bit about that, because I do here's the thing. I don't want people so much to fall in love with it that I can't find it anywhere, but I do. It is literally one of my favorite products
Yeah, it's a very small amount of our production. I'd say about 1% of our production is single malt right now, but it's been fun, especially never making it before. None of us here had made single malt before we just started doing it, and so we went at it like we do our normal bourbon mash bills or our rye mash bills. We ferment on the grain, distill on the grain, which is a lot different than how a Scotch whiskey is made, or a traditional single malt, where you're lautering and all that stuff and distilling a wash instead of your mash. But yeah, it's probably one of the things where we've experimented most with malt strains and what cooperage we're aging it into.
Right.
And so that the small batch single malt is a blend of all of those experiments. So we got different single malt varieties, different cooperages that were used to age into it, and peated and non-peated malt.
Yeah, for sure.
It's cool. It's fun to play around with when 90+% of what you're making is bourbon.
Right.
But it's really good, and when I can get people to try it, they're on board with it and like it. So, I mean,
you guys are more known for your ryes, though. Is that correct? Rye over bourbon?
yeah, I mean, especially when the brand was first started before the renovation happened, and all of it was our 1776 products. I think the rye made a name for itself.
Oh, absolutely.
We do see ourselves as a rye house, and a lot of it. I'm very partial to rye whiskey myself. It's pretty much in all of our bourbons in some form or fashion.
Awesome. So, just on a personal standpoint, what do you like producing the most? What do you like working on? You know, if you could say this is my favorite thing to produce and mash in, and what would it be?
I'd have to say anything that we use our malted rye with.
Okay.
Because I really like how it works as a blending component in the bourbon, and then I also just like the distillate from something with a bunch of rye malt in it. It's really interesting. It does have rye character. It might be a little more muted and sweeter, but rye malt's really fun to use in whiskey, and I think it should be used more.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Cody, for the tour. Thank you for the tasting and the hospitality, the history, just everything about the distillery. I certainly appreciate everything that you've shown us today.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
All right. Thanks, bud. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
Well, folks, that's a wrap of our whirlwind tour of James E. Pepper Distillery. I hope you enjoyed the behind-the-scenes peek into the craftsmanship and passion that goes into every drop. If this little taste has left you thirsty for more, remember, the best way to truly experience is to pay a visit yourself. So until next time, keep those spirits high and glasses higher. This is Bo Cumberland signing off from 10 Minute Distillery Tours. Cheers and happy tasting.